Kia ora, mōrena tātou, ngā mihi nui. Kia koutou, ko Steve Kerr, tōku ingoa, he Pākehā hau. I'm the Māori Housing Policy Manager here at Te Puni Kōkiri and one of the team that did the report. I'm talking while just trying to set this up. Is that appearing for everyone?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome,
Thanks
thank
for the
you.
thumbs up, team. Kia
Let's
ora.
get that straight. Okay, ka pai. Thanks, Kay Marie, and thanks TK for kicking us off, and Paolo and Shalom, and all the other speakers that have come after me as well. Also, just thanks to everyone who's joining the call this morning for your interest in the kaupapa, and in the report. It's really great to see that. Just wanted to say a few words about why Te Puni Kōkiri is doing this mahi. So our vision as an agency is thriving whānau, and obviously having a warm, dry, secure home is a key thing for whānau, to help whānau thrive. But Papakāinga, as Kay Marie just kind of said better than I can, Papakāinga goes beyond that. So allowing greater connection between whānau, that kind of cultural well-being, and connection to the whenua as well. So that's why I think it's such an exciting and inspirational kaupapa. TPK's funded projects for years, as Paolo and Shalom mentioned. Today, this mahi is about our policy function, where we're trying to address some of the systemic barriers that exist across quite a few different regulatory systems that make it difficult to develop Papakāinga, more difficult than it should be. So I won't go on at length about these, because I think most people on the call will be familiar with this sort of context, and some of you will know about this report that was produced in 2011 by the Auditor General, but that's quite a good that's a good document in terms of setting out the hoops that whānau need to go through to develop their land, develop housing on whenua Māori, so on Māori freehold land that's subject to the jurisdiction of the Māori Land Court and Te Ture Whenua Māori Act. Usually in multiple ownership, so working with whānau and other owners in the whenua to develop a shared aspiration, accessing finance to build, as Paolo talked about, there is more difficult on whenua Māori. You'll have to go through Māori Land Court process generally, and then we get to the kind of consent processes we talked today, not just local authorities, also regional councils and so on. And the Auditor General also talked about the lack of coordination between all these different agencies that have a role. Hopefully things have improved a little bit since 2011, but basically all of these challenges still exist. So that's just a kind of a reminder of the context for this work, and we are kind of focused on one challenge among many. We wanted to kind of drill down into this particular issue, and then build a bit of a work program to try and improve the situation. So the purpose of the report is not about kind of ranking one plan against another or anything, but we tried to come up with a scheme that would give us an overall picture and snapshot of where we're at today with planning rules, look for examples of good practice and what some of the issues are, and we're really keen to get feedback today and over the next few weeks about whether we have identified the sort of issues, or whether there are other issues that we haven't identified that whānau or planners and councils are aware of that they think could be improved. There are, we think, some opportunities at the moment to improve the situation. So this mahi really does align with government priorities around increasing housing supply, increasing the supply of developable land for housing. And so our role is to try and make the most of those opportunities to push forward the Papakāinga kaupapa. And then before I move on, just wanted to acknowledge some of the limitations in the report and our analysis. I suppose, like I said before, there are a lot of steps in the journey, and we're only looking at this one step. It's interesting that development contributions and a few other things have come up in the chat already. Those are all important as well, but this analysis is just district plan rules. And also, I think it's really important to acknowledge, we've talked to our own housing kaimahi, some of whom are on the call, kia ora, and we've had some conversations with councils and whānau and trustees who have developed Papakāinga, but essentially this is a desktop piece of research, and today is the start of us trying to push out and do a little bit more engagement to kind of understand what's really happening out there in the real world. So yeah, I'm assuming basically that if you're going to have read the report, you may already have done so, or you can certainly access that afterwards. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole into too much into the kind of planning system and district plans, but this is there are a lot of people who do know that those systems really well on the call. So I wanted to just explain our methodology here. Quickly, the writing on the slide might be quite small, but essentially what we did was access all the district plans for 65 plans across the motu just online, and we looked for, I think as Paul said, the kupu Māori, Control F to find the plan objectives and policies and rules that relate to Papakāinga. Often they use the word Papakāinga in the content of those objectives or policies or rules. Sometimes they don't. And then where there is a rule, and most plans do have a rule for Papakāinga, we did a little bit more analysis to look at where that rule applies. So is it district-wide or is it in certain zones? And if so, which zones? Often a Papakāinga or Māori purpose zone. Then we looked at what is the most enabling activity status, permitted, controlled, restricted, discretionary, anywhere in that district under that Papakāinga rule. So you'll often have different activity status in different zones, so it starts to get a bit complicated. Then we captured any of the more detailed rules or sort of performance standards that limit the number of homes that can actually be developed on a block. We looked for definitions and detail in the rules that explicitly enabled a Papakāinga to have more than just homes, so a kohanga or an urupa or community kind of cultural buildings as well, which is a core part of Papakāinga. And then finally, we looked at land status. I saw that came up in the chat as well. So generally speaking, when we're talking about Māori land and whenua, we're always talking about Māori freehold land, so land under the jurisdiction of the court, the taonga tuku iho, with connection back to the land. But some plans also have Papakāinga rules that apply on certain kinds of general land, which we think is really positive. And Paula mentioned the 67 Act, which is one of the factors in when general land should come under the rule as well. Sorry, one final point on this. We are updating this table because we've gotten a little bit of feedback from people, which we really appreciate. There are a few things that have been updated since we did the analysis, and we will provide an updated table because we actually think the table itself could be a pretty useful tool for whānau or whenua owners or managers to find their way to the relevant part of the district plan nice and quickly. So the kind of our findings and observations, just got a couple of slides on these. Again, it's all in the report. I encourage you to have a look. It's a pretty short report and it's reasonably easy to read, I hope. It's a mixed picture, but most plans do make provision for Papakāinga in some way, which is positive. But there's a lot of room for those plans to be made more effective. There's lots of examples of good practice, which we'd like to see spread more widely. And I suppose one other observation is that there has been a real high level of interest from Council Kaimahi that we've spoken to in this kaupapa, which again is really great. So there's an opportunity here, I think, to do something pretty good. Yeah, 45 out of 65 plans do have an explicit rule for Papakāinga, which should be positive, but in a lot of cases those could be improved. Definition of Papakāinga, the term itself and the land use sort of activity varies a bit between plans. So in a lot of cases it really only refers to housing on Māori land, or residential uses, but there are some examples of good practice that explicitly mention other types of activities that can be enabled through a Papakāinga rule. Again, the rules usually only apply on Māori freehold land, but again, there's some good practice where rules also apply on land that was compulsorily converted to general land in the late 60s and early 70s under the legislation that Paolo mentioned, or land that's been general land that's been returned as part of a treaty settlement, for example, and is vested in a trust. So there's some protection there for the whenua. So there's some certain kinds of general land that where the Papakāinga rule should apply. And then in terms of where the rules apply, in 17 plans, the Papakāinga is a district-wide activity, so it will depend on the legal status of the land as to where the rule applies. But elsewhere, it usually applies on a Māori purpose zone of one kind or another, or sometimes in the general kind of rural zone or coastal zone, reflecting where whenua Māori is usually located. Activity status can vary a bit definitely between different districts, I suppose, as you'd expect, given the way that the plans are developed, but also within different zones within the same district, you can have a different activity status, or depending on the number of homes, the activity status will change. So it just makes it quite complex. I should have said probably right at the beginning that I don't have a planning background, and the team here, I mean, we got help from people with planning backgrounds, but we're coming to it as kind of lay people in a sense, and it really is quite complex to interpret those provisions. But we did find that in 29 plans, Papakāinga was a permitted activity, at least somewhere in the district, but it could have been a very, very small geographical Papakāinga zone. A lot of plans have got rules that limit how many homes can be built on a site, so minimum area per dwelling of 2,000 square meters, or a coverage limit or a density limit, or big setbacks. We didn't find many examples where the standards that kind of limit the number of homes on a site were actually based on the principle of what is sustainable, what can the land sustain, but we think that should probably be the only limit. Amenity values has been identified by others as a bit problematic. And then Papakāinga development plans, I think, was our last observation. Quite a few councils require these, and generally the sort of feedback we've had is that they can actually be quite a positive thing. If they're not too onerous, it's good to set out with a good design and thinking about potential future use and so on. So conclusions. Yeah, as I said, in terms of, I think probably from central government, local authorities, everyone understands the housing shortage and the need to develop more homes. And we think that better Papakāinga planning rules are one of the ways that can happen. Plans need rules, not just sort of objectives and policies. There were a few plans that had objectives or policies but no rule to back them up, or a Papakāinga rule that just essentially reflected the underlying rule for the zone. Those rules should apply in all the places where Māori communities may want to develop Papakāinga, so including general land, including urban areas, and residential areas. And a Papakāinga is not just a subdivision, so those rules need to reflect the other land uses and different set of expectations around proximity of homes to one another and other land uses. We're just flagging that the planning rules don't exist in a vacuum. Issues like development contributions and rating policies and regional council consents and so on are all part of the system that whānau need to navigate. And in terms of developing plan changes, working through plan changes, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later on, you need really good relationships between council and tangata whenua to develop effective rules. Finally, next steps with this mahi. We're keen to get feedback on what we've produced in the report. Have we identified the issues that are top of the list in terms of what you all see? Have we missed issues? Have we not articulated them correctly? And we want to build on this analysis, not just produce a report, but we want to build a work program that actually has an impact in terms of improved planning rules at a local level. That's the end game. And our Minister Pōtaka, I think, is very keen too. He is really supportive of this kaupapa. He recognises the need and the potential of having a more enabling system, making it easier to develop Papakāinga. So there is a good alignment there, as I said, with this mahi and some of the broader government priorities around housing supply. So yeah, you'll have the opportunity a bit later this morning to share through the breakout sessions and so on your thoughts and on this kaupapa, and we'll follow up with a bit of a survey by email afterwards, so you'll be able to share your whakaaro that way too. And one thing that we'll ask about and that we're interested in terms of the planning system, we know a couple of years ago work began here on a national direction. So that's something that central government can do sort of to influence the local planning rules. There was work started on a national direction for Papakāinga, but fell away. So we're interested in people's views about whether that could be of assistance to local authorities as well. And finally, just that last bullet point, just want to put just flag that we've got another piece of research coming out in a few months where we've commissioned some researchers to go around, visit Papakāinga, talk to trustees about the development experience and talk to whānau about their experience of living on Papakāinga. That's going to give us a really good evidence base about some of those challenges, but also about the benefits experienced by whānau on Papakāinga. Probably something that a lot of people on this call are well aware of, but we want to build up a better evidence base for that to help us with our mahi. And that is me. So yeah, thanks for your time.